In NileDesk, a pivot table is a report used to summarize and analyze data by dynamically organizing data into rows, columns, and aggregated values. It allows grouping, filtering, sorting, and performing calculations like totals or averages. Pivot tables are commonly used for tasks like sales analysis, performance tracking, and financial reporting, enabling insights from multiple perspectives. This is a sales invoice process with fields like category, subcategory, salesperson, quantity, and amount. Now, let's transform this data into a dynamic and insightful pivot table report. To create a pivot table, navigate to the Reports tab and click on Create Report. From the options, select Pivot Table, and then provide a name and description for your report. Let's create a salesman performance pivot table. In the Pivot Table Editor, start by selecting the row fields, column fields, and value fields. The row fields define the rows of the table, the column fields set the table's columns, and the value fields determine the data displayed within the table. This setup allows you to organize and visualize your data effectively. You can choose an aggregation type for the value fields, such as sum, count, min, max, or average. This aggregation determines how your data is grouped and calculated. For example, let's select the sum of the amount field to get the total values in our pivot table. You can also decide whether to display grand totals for rows and columns. This option helps provide an overall summary of your data. Once you've selected your fields, click on the Calculate button to generate and preview your pivot table. This will show you how your data is organized and ensure everything looks just right. You can add multiple fields to the row and column sections. Let's add subcategory to the row field and click Refresh to update the pivot table. Here's the pivot table with nested row fields. You can also apply the same to the column fields. The pivot table also lets you add multiple value fields. Let's add quantity as another value field and set the aggregation type to max. Here's the pivot table with quantity added as a value field. You can also modify the value field label in the pivot table to make it more relevant to your data. To hide the value label, simply uncheck Show Value Title. You can also apply filters to the pivot table. For example, to view data for just this year, select the field and apply the expression function for this year. This will filter the table to show only this year's data. Or to view data for just the completed process, select Status and set the value to Completed. Once your pivot table is created, simply click Create, and your pivot table will be generated. To view it, click on the Report template, where you'll see your last generated pivot table. To update the table, click the Refresh button, and the updated pivot table will be created. You can also download your pivot table data as an Excel or CSV file. This pivot table will also be available in the NileDesk Report section. From here, you can modify, set authorization, rename, or delete your pivot report.